They claimed I owed $1 million to an HOA I never joined. I laughed until armed guards showed up and my yacht vanished without a trace. What they didn't know? I had it GPS tagged. What followed was a war of lies, fraud, and justice, one that would take down an entire empire. I've always liked living away from people. My little slice of Florida coastline wasn't anything flashy. A modest house with a creaky dock, a couple of old oak trees, and my pride and joy. A 40-foot blue-hulled yacht I named Second Wind. After retiring from a career at sea, I bought this place specifically because it was not part of any HOA nonsense. I wanted salt air, freedom, and the kind of peace you can only get when no one's watching over your shoulder telling you your garage door paint is non-compliant. So when I found a letter in my mailbox one muggy Thursday morning with a big glossy header reading Oceanside Community Board, I figured it was junk mail, maybe a real estate flyer or some ad. But the envelope was too heavy, official looking. Curiosity got the better of me. Inside, 4 pages of bureaucratic insanity, violation notices, warnings, a list of supposed infractions against something called community code. Apparently, I had committed the following sins: keeping an oversized marine vessel in plain sight, failing to seek architectural approval for the home's exterior color, and my personal favorite, accumulating outstanding membership dues totaling $9,000. The thing is, I'd never joined any community. My property stood alone, on its own lot, separate from the suburban rows across the canal. I paid my taxes, I didn't block any sidewalks, and the only noises coming from my place were either wind chimes or seagulls fighting over sandwich crusts. So naturally I laughed, tossed the letter into a drawer next to expired fishing licenses and receipts from 20 years ago, and went on with my day. Figured it was a clerical error. Wrong address. Happens. 2 days later, while I was rinsing the salt off the deck of my yacht, I heard a voice behind me that could have curdled fresh milk. "Excuse me, are you Mark Stanley?" I turned around, hose still running, and found myself looking at a woman in a crisp white blouse, clipboard in hand, standing beside a tall guy with a buzz cut and sunglasses. Security type. She was mid-50s, tightly wound, with the kind of expression you only see in DMV lines and HOA board meetings. "I'm Karen Wells," she announced as if I should be impressed. "President of the Oceanside Community Board." I blinked. "Good for you. You received our notice earlier this week regarding your violations. I wanted to stop by and clarify a few things in person." "You're talking about that junk you sent me?" "Yeah, I got it. I also ignored it. This property isn't part of any HOA." She gave me a smile I imagined she practiced in the mirror. "Actually, as of 3 months ago, your lot was officially annexed into the Oceanside jurisdiction. We updated our community boundary maps after a rezone initiative passed unanimously by our board." "Let me stop you right there," I said, cutting off the stream of legalese. "This lot has been independent since 1978. I've got the deed, the survey, the land registry, and probably the guy who mapped it still alive to testify. You don't have any authority here." Karen didn't miss a beat. "We have the latest maps from the county assessor's office. I'd be happy to provide a copy. Moving forward, you'll be expected to comply with our guidelines, starting with removal of that oversized watercraft and repainting your shutters." I stared at her, trying to decide whether she was psychotic or just extremely misinformed. "You came onto my dock to tell me I can't park my own boat at my own house?" I asked. She bristled slightly. "Yacht." "Oh, my apologies, my yacht," I repeated with a smirk. Buzzcut security guy shifted his weight, like he wanted to posture but wasn't sure if I was armed or just old. I was both. Listen, I said, turning off the hose and walking up the dock. You're trespassing. Whatever map you cooked up in your little wine and vote meeting has nothing to do with me. Kindly get off my property. Karen's face tightened like she bit into a lemon. This is going to be difficult if you choose to be non-compliant. Continued violations will result in escalating fines. Fines from whom? I said, stepping right up to her. Your imaginary jurisdiction? You gonna put a boot on my boat next? She backed up half a step but held her ground. Consider this your second and final notice. Great. I'll frame it next to the first. They left slowly with the kind of menace HOA people think looks intimidating. I watched them walk off, then looked out at my yacht, which bobbed gently against its mooring lines, utterly unimpressed by their nonsense. A few days later, a bright red envelope appeared taped to my front gate, the kind of tape that peels paint. This time, the fine had grown to $12,000. A second envelope included something titled Mandatory Community Compliance Schedule, which, among other gems, required me to plant approved hydrangeas along my fence line and submit all future landscaping plans for review. I called my lawyer. Katie Moreno was a sharp Cuban-American firebrand I'd met years ago when she helped me with a zoning dispute over a dock extension. She specialized in property law and had a nasty habit of winning. I forwarded her the letters. Her response came back within the hour. They're bluffing. None of this is legal, but document everything. And so I started a file. Letters, pictures, notes. I wasn't taking them seriously yet, but something in Karen's smile, that smug little curve of assumed power, had left a splinter under my skin. I didn't know yet just how far they were willing to go, but I was about to find out. By the following week, my mailbox had transformed from a quiet receptacle of fishing catalogs and utility bills into a frontline trench. Every day brought something new from the so-called Oceanside Community Board. Thick manila envelopes, glossy printed brochures, even a fake community newsletter that included a picture of my house with a red circle drawn around the yacht like it was some kind of criminal evidence. The fines had ballooned. What started as $12,000 had now become $26,000 and change, then $38,000. By the end of the second week, I was apparently in debt to the HOA for more than $50,000. For a club I never joined. Katie was already preparing a cease and desist letter, but even she was starting to frown at the sheer volume of harassment. They're throwing mud to see what sticks, she told me over the phone. But the fact they're escalating this aggressively tells me someone over there is either arrogant or very desperate. I vote for both, I muttered, flipping through another thick envelope titled Urgent Enforcement Action Pending. Inside, more threats, more fake legalese, and absurdly a list of alternative compliance packages which included options like monthly community mediation sessions for a fee, or enrolling in a restorative behavior program. Restorative behavior, my ass. One afternoon, while fixing a corroded hinge on the dock ladder, I noticed a flash of sunlight off a windshield parked across the canal. A beige SUV with dark-tinted windows sat idling under the palms, too far to see clearly, but not too far to recognize the silhouette of someone pointing a camera in my direction. It wasn't the first time. The week before, I'd caught a drone buzzing over my property line, hovering for nearly 20 minutes before zipping away. 2 days later, a man with a clipboard had wandered up my driveway and started snapping photos of my house. When I asked what the hell he was doing, he claimed he was surveying for landscaping compliance. I told him to get off my property or I'd plant his clipboard in the nearest mangrove. He left. Still, it was clear something bigger was happening. This wasn't just HOA overreach. It was a coordinated pressure campaign. And then came the whisper. It was Tuesday evening. I was at the local bait shop grabbing some tackle when I ran into old Pete Granger, a neighbor from 2 lots down. Pete's a Vietnam vet with skin like worn leather and the kind of laugh that makes birds take flight. He leaned close and said, "Hey, just so you know, I overheard something at the marina. Karen's been telling people you're a legal test case, that if they force you to comply, the other independents will fall in line." I stared at him. "Like I'm the damn Alamo?" He chuckled, but it wasn't funny. "They think if they break you, the rest will be too scared to fight back." The moment I got home, I set up a whole new layer of protection. Extra security cameras, motion-triggered and cloud-synced. I bolted a GPS tracker under my truck's wheel well and stashed another on the yacht, just below the galley sink. Not because I thought they'd actually try something, but because a little voice in my gut whispered, "What if they already are?" The next morning, 2 uniformed men appeared at my gate. Not cops, private security. Same buzz-cut type from before, different polo shirt. The taller one handed me a sealed envelope and said flatly, "You've got until the end of the month to resolve your outstanding balance. Or else," I raised an eyebrow. "Or else what?" The other guy, younger, twitchier, didn't answer. He just stared, jaw tight. I didn't blink. "This is your final warning," I said. "You step onto my property again without a warrant or badge, I'll assume you're trespassing with intent." They backed off, but not before making it clear this wasn't some friendly HOA reminder. This was intimidation. Katie, when I told her, was furious. She filed a restraining order request the same day. But we both knew it wouldn't do much unless something bigger happened. In the meantime, she kept digging into the HOA's tax records, their filings, the county land use maps. And that's when we found it. The updated map the HOA kept referencing didn't exist in any official registry. No assessor's seal, no filing date, no county clerk certification. It was a PDF mock-up someone had probably whipped up in PowerPoint. They had printed copies, sure, distributed them in the community newsletter, posted them at the clubhouse. But legally, completely worthless. Except, and here's the kicker, the HOA had used that fake map to file a lien. A real lien. On my property. Filed with a real signature. Of someone who no longer worked for the county. Katie's voice got very quiet on the call. "This is fraud, straight up. And if they push that lien to a collections process, they could try to move toward asset seizure. It's thin as hell. Any judge would shred it. But it could stall title sales, scare banks, or worse." "Worse?" I asked. She sighed. "If they try to sell the lien to a third-party collector, you'd be dragged through months of legal garbage just to clear your title. Even if you win, it's a financial meat grinder." I said nothing for a moment. Then, "So what's next?" She answered without hesitation. "We sue. Full civil litigation, but we do it right. We gather, we document, and we make it so airtight they can't wiggle out. Because at this point, it's not just harassment, it's premeditated." I agreed. But I also knew lawsuits take time. And these people weren't exactly patient. By the end of that week, the fines, which I now called ransom notes, had hit over $100,000. The letters came thicker, glossy, official. One had a fake community court seal that looked suspiciously like a clip art gavel. They weren't slowing down. If anything, they were ramping up. And something told me they were just getting started. The letter came in a crimson envelope, thicker than the rest, embossed with gold lettering like they were trying to sell me a country club membership instead of threatening me with asset seizure. The top line read, "Final Escalation Notice," followed by a bold subtitle, "Oceanside Community Enforcement Initiative, Phase 3. I read it while drinking black coffee on the dock, watching pelicans argue over a floating hunk of dead fish. The absurdity of the scene almost made me laugh. But then I got to the bottom line. Current cumulative fine balance, $498,750. Half a damn million. For hydrangeas I never planted, siding I never approved, and a yacht parked on my own damn property. But what chilled me wasn't the number. It was the paragraph underneath. If full settlement is not received within 7 business days, the board reserves the right to initiate collection via Chapter 9 Asset Reallocation Clause, including but not limited to non-exempt movable assets visible from public view or community property lines. Translation: they were threatening to take my yacht. Katie was on the line in under 5 minutes. "They're bluffing," she said, but there was hesitation in her voice. "There's no such clause in any Florida HOA statute, not even in the abusive ones, but if they've faked court filings, who knows what else they're willing to try." "They're calling it Phase 3 now," I said. "What the hell's Phase 4, burning my house down?" She didn't laugh. "We need to fast-track the suit. I'm drafting an emergency injunction, but Mark, if they're planning to move on your property without a judge involved, you need to be ready for worse." I already was. I spent that afternoon bolting heavy-duty padlocks onto the dock's gate, even though it sat behind a locked fence already. Installed floodlights, mounted another motion camera above the tool shed, checked the GPS tracker under the galley sink, and added a second one, just in case someone got cute. That night, the floodlight caught movement by the front gate. I reviewed the camera feed. 2 figures in black standing on the edge of my property line for 3 minutes talking. Then they left. No vehicles nearby, no attempt to break in. Just standing, watching. The next morning I woke up to find my mailbox open and empty. Mail scattered across the driveway like someone had rifled through it. Nothing stolen, just chaos. A warning. Then came the visit. They didn't knock. I was on the back deck cleaning reel grease off my hands when I heard voices from the front yard. Not raised, controlled, professional. I walked around the house slowly, cautiously, and there they were, 3 men in matching navy blazers standing next to a black SUV parked halfway up my driveway like it belonged there. The oldest of the trio stepped forward with a thin briefcase and a smile that looked like it had been surgically attached. "Mr. Stanley," he said. "My name is Roger Heald, Special Advisor to the Oceanside Community Enforcement Division. May we speak?" "Not here," I said. "Private property." His smile didn't flinch. "We won't take much of your time. We're here as a courtesy. We've been instructed to offer you a final opportunity to resolve your outstanding balance outside of litigation." I crossed my arms. "I'm already in litigation, and you're trespassing." He flipped open the briefcase like a magician revealing a trick. Inside, a thick packet with my name on it, a highlighted spreadsheet of bogus fines, and a stamped notice titled "Intention to Collect via Remedial Property Action." "That's not real," I said, pointing to the document. "There's no such statute." "Actually," he replied smoothly, "under our revised community charter ratified January 1st, discretionary enforcement of movable assets is permitted in extraordinary cases of non-compliance." "You made that up." "Mr. Stanley," he said with the patience of a man used to winning, "let me speak plainly. The board has exhausted its leniency. We have authorization to escalate. That includes the seizure and impoundment of community-facing movable property, beginning with—" He looked toward the dock. "Your yacht." I felt something shift in my chest. Not fear, not yet, but the kind of fury that starts deep and slow like an engine spooling up to redline. "You try to take my boat," I said, voice low, "and you won't be leaving this property standing upright." The second guy shifted uncomfortably. The third cracked his knuckles like he'd just remembered he had hands. Roger didn't blink. "We'll take that as a no to negotiation. You'll be hearing from our legal team." "Good," I said. "My lawyer misses them." They left without another word. Katie filed the injunction paperwork within 24 hours. The court date was scheduled for Monday morning. We had everything lined up: documents, videos, land surveys, copies of real and fake maps, even a certified statement from the county land assessor confirming my lot had never been part of any HOA. I was ready, but they weren't finished yet. Friday evening, as the sun dropped behind the mangroves, I opened my email to find a new notice. Action executed. No signature, no explanation, just a case number and a timestamp. Confused, I stepped outside to check the mailbox. Maybe they'd left something. Then I froze. I ran. Down the dock, past the gate, to the edge of the water. The mooring lines were there, still tied, still coiled, but the yacht, gone, vanished. They had taken her. My boat, the one I built up, sailed through 2 hurricanes, poured my savings and soul into... gone. Just like that. And that's when the voice inside me stopped whispering and started shouting. They weren't bluffing. They wanted war. They had it. I stood on the end of the dock, staring at the empty water, like maybe, just maybe, if I squinted hard enough, she'd reappear. But the space where second wind had rocked gently for years was nothing but a flat shimmer, the wake already settled. They had taken her, not in the dead of night like burglars, but bold and silent. Surgical. Clean. Like they wanted me to know they could. The ropes were still tied, not cut, not torn, loosened, untied carefully and coiled neatly, almost respectfully, like a psychotic kindergartner straightening a crime scene. My hands trembled as I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the GPS tracking app. I had stashed the first tracker in the galley behind a false panel near the sink. The second one was hidden in the bilge just to be paranoid. The map loaded. My heart stopped. There she was, about 43 miles south in a private marina outside Palm Key, pinging from a dry dock lot registered to a company I'd never heard of. Sunwave Vessel Holdings. Katie answered on the first ring. "They took the yacht," I said, voice flat. A long pause. "What?" "Second wind. Gone. I've got a GPS ping. It's in Palm Key." She didn't waste breath swearing. "I'm calling the sheriff's department now. Don't go down there alone." She needn't have warned me. I wasn't an idiot. I'd seen enough in my past life to know you don't march into a hornet's nest with nothing but a smartphone and righteous indignation. That night, the county sheriff's office filed a report, but gave me the same limp answer I'd come to expect. "It's a civil dispute, sir. If the HOA has documentation, it may not qualify as theft. You'll need to handle this through the courts." I nearly punched a hole in the drywall. Katie and I filed an emergency motion the next morning, but the court wouldn't hear it until Monday. 48 hours of legal limbo while my boat sat, essentially kidnapped, in some corporate shell's warehouse. I needed help. Enter Edgar Foster. Edgar was a private investigator I'd met years ago through a mutual contact, a retired sheriff who told me, "If you ever need someone who doesn't blink at bad people, call Edgar." Former military, former cop, and just paranoid enough to be effective. We met that afternoon in the back booth of a barbecue joint off the highway. I gave him everything: GPS data, photos of the dock, the fake lien documents, the list of the HOA board members. He didn't blink. "Let me guess," he said between bites of brisket. "Your HOA president's name is Karen." "I swear to God that's not a joke," he grunted. "I've seen this kind of thing before. Not at this scale, though. This one smells like racketeering." I leaned forward. "Think you can find who signed off on the operation?" He wiped his hands. "I can find who hired the guy who loaded the trailer, and the guy who sold them the trailer, and probably the dude who fueled the truck, but it'll cost you." "How much?" He named a number. I didn't flinch. "You get me names, I want everything." "Consider it done." While Edgar got to work, Katie dug into the business registry. Sunwave Vessel Holdings turned out to be a shell company, of course, registered to a P.O. box in Tallahassee and linked to an LLC managed by someone named James Burke. Katie's voice dropped when she saw the name. That's the HOA treasurer. The connections snapped together like magnets. Karen called the shots. Burke moved the money. Someone on the inside pulled the fake paperwork strings. This wasn't some overzealous HOA sending nasty letters. This was a coordinated operation to steal private property under the guise of authority. And they had done it before. Edgar confirmed it the next day. 3 other cases, he said over the phone, his voice grim. 2 boats, 1 RV, all large-ticket items, all confiscated from homes newly annexed into the HOA map. Owners never followed up, scared off, or paid settlements. And the cops didn't do a thing? He chuckled bitterly. They filed it as civil miscommunication. HOA lobbies have deep pockets and no one wants to take the political heat. I slammed my fist on the table. Not this time. Edgar also found something else, security footage. He'd pulled video from a gas station along the main highway, catching the flatbed trailer with my yacht rolling past at sunrise. No escort, no cops, no flashing lights. Just a standard commercial hauler and 2 guys in uniforms from Maritime Asset Recovery Group, when another company registered to the same address as Sunwave. He also had names. The driver was a contractor named Victor Alonzo, hired through a shell agency with a one-time payment issued from, wait for it, the HOA's operating budget. They paid to steal my yacht with community funds. Katie was livid. We're not just suing anymore, we're going nuclear. That Sunday, Edgar visited the Palm Key Marina under a fake name, posing as a potential buyer. He was shown my yacht by a sleazy sales rep who claimed it had been repossessed for non-payment. Edgar took covert video of the entire interaction, including the moment the rep opened the cabin door and revealed my personal effects still inside. Photos, a toolbox, a monogrammed jacket. Smoking gun. With Monday's court hearing approaching, we had everything. GPS logs, false maps, shell company records, video of the transport, the bogus sale attempt, and proof the HOA president and treasurer were both financially linked to the operation. I couldn't sleep that night, not from fear, from anticipation. They'd crossed the line. And now, we were going to drag them across it face first. Monday morning arrived like a war drum. Katie and I marched into court with a binder so thick it could have been used to stop bullets. She wore her signature navy blazer and that cold, methodical look in her eyes that always preceded someone getting verbally dismembered. I didn't speak unless spoken to. I didn't need to. The paper trail did all the shouting. The judge, a weathered old man named Halberd with the emotional range of a brick, skimmed through our emergency filings while making occasional grunts of disapproval. When Katie laid out the GPS logs and pointed to the timestamps matching the supposed lien enforcement, he stopped her mid-sentence and asked the opposing counsel, a smug little man representing the HOA, one question. Do you have any court-authorized documentation supporting this seizure? The attorney stammered, tried to dance around it, used words like implied compliance authority and community charter enforcement latitude. Judge Halberd just blinked. You stole a yacht. The injunction was granted immediately. The judge ordered that the vessel be returned to my possession at once, prohibited any further HOA actions, and froze the board's operating account pending investigation. Katie turned to me and whispered, "We're in the door." But that was just the beginning. Over the next week, Edgar went full bloodhound. He traced payments from the HOA's community budget to no less than 3 shell companies, all tied to James Burke, the treasurer. One of them, Sunwave Vessel Holdings, had been active for less than 6 months and already had over $200,000 run through it. Edgar also uncovered something nastier: bribery. A former junior clerk at the county mapping department, a guy named Terrence O'Neill, admitted that he'd been paid under the table to adjust the HOA jurisdiction map retroactively. He provided screenshots of Venmo payments from an alias account linked to Karen Wells, along with messages that said things like, "Map finalized," and "Need this updated before July or we can't move on Stanley." That blew the whole thing wide open. Meanwhile, I got my boat back, or rather what was left of her. They'd stripped her interior of anything they could resell: navigation gear, tools, even the galley appliances. It was like someone ransacked my home and left just enough behind to remind me it used to be mine. But it didn't matter, because we were burning the whole damn tree now, not just shaking the branches. Edgar's next discovery came with a bonus: surveillance footage from a local shipping yard 2 counties over. It showed Victor Alonzo, the yacht hauler, loading another boat onto a similar trailer, this time registered under a different HOA name, Harbor Ridge Community Trust. When Edgar ran the names of that HOA's board, Karen Wells appeared, again. As a consultant, she wasn't just the president of one HOA, she was the puppet master behind several. They were running a regional scam, identifying properties near HOA boundaries, forging documents, annexing land, then enforcing fake violations to justify seizure or extortion. And my case was just the one that got loud. We handed everything to Katie, who built a civil RICO case brick by brick: racketeering, wire fraud, document forgery, criminal conspiracy. And suddenly, people started disappearing. James Burke stopped showing up to HOA meetings. His house was emptied out within 48 hours. A neighbor reported seeing a U-Haul with out-of-state plates pull away at 4 in the morning. Katie filed a missing witness request with the court, but Edgar tracked Burke's phone activity to a remote cabin in the Smoky Mountains. The private security guy, the tall, silent one from the earlier visit, was found attempting to cross into Mexico using his cousin's ID. Edgar intercepted him at a gas station near the border, knocked politely on his driver's side window, and handed him a subpoena before letting the marshals do their part. Karen? She made it as far as Miami International Airport. Edgar had flagged her name with TSA, and when she tried to check in under the name Catherine Wilkes, she was arrested with 2 burner phones, a passport from St. Kitts, and a money belt containing nearly $50,000 in cash. They tried to run. They failed. One by one, they were dragged back into the light, the county prosecutor, now under pressure from the media and several enraged homeowners, opened a criminal investigation. We handed over all of Edgar's findings: encrypted drives, video files, audio recordings, transaction logs. And then came the cherry on top. Edgar found an internal HOA memo, buried in a cloud folder mislabeled as Budget Planning Q3. It contained a list of properties marked for targeted expansion. 15 homes, all of them near HOA boundaries, all of them listed with dollar estimates next to potential seizures. The file was titled Annex Phase 4, Harvest Candidates. Harvest. They didn't even try to sound innocent. Katie's face went pale when she read it. We've got them, all of them. We added the memo to the case file, and just like that, a civil suit turned into a goddamn earthquake. They thought I'd just roll over. They thought they could steal my boat, bury me in fake fines, and vanish before the dust settled. They were wrong. And now? Now the court had teeth, and those teeth were about to sink in deep. The courthouse was packed, not with tourists or traffic court regulars, but with journalists, disgruntled homeowners, and people who just wanted to see someone in a suit finally get what was coming to them. Camera crews lined the sidewalk, Microphones extended like spears every time someone in a blazer crossed the threshold. This wasn't just a hearing anymore. It was a televised reckoning. The prosecution, backed by both the county and state, had formally pressed charges under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. RICO. That meant it wasn't just about me and my stolen yacht anymore. It was about an organized network of exploitation masquerading as community management. Karen Wells entered the courtroom in cuffs. No pearl necklace this time, no clipboard or smug smirk. Her hair was pulled back tight, jaw clenched like it was wired shut. She didn't look defiant. She looked terrified. She was flanked by 2 public defenders. Her private legal team had dropped her 3 days prior, citing irreconcilable differences, probably because she tried to run with cash and forged ID. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Fowler with a voice like wet gravel, took one look at the docket and declared, "This is going to be a long day. Everyone sit down." We had spent weeks preparing. Katie, alongside the state prosecutor, presented our evidence like a machine gun firing truth. Edgar took the stand first, laying out his investigation in relentless detail. The GPS data, the surveillance tapes, the shell companies, the forged documents, the bank transfers. Every time he dropped a new name, someone in the gallery gasped. Then came the victims. One by one, other homeowners testified. A widow whose late husband's RV was towed and sold. A disabled veteran who was fined into bankruptcy. A single mom who paid over $70,000 in community violation fees to keep her home from being reclaimed. They told their stories with shaking hands and full hearts. Each one painted a picture of quiet, calculated theft. Then it was my turn. I sat on the witness stand and told them what they did to me. Not just the fake fines or the fake maps or the yacht, but the stalking, the intimidation, the gaslighting. I told them how I watched people I'd never met stand at the edge of my fence and photograph my home like it was some kind of exhibit. How they tried to make me feel like I was the criminal for daring to live outside their little kingdom of beige paint codes and manicured obedience. Karen didn't look at me once. Then Katie presented the final nail. The Comanx Phase 4, Harvest Candidates. Document. The courtroom went dead silent. People leaned forward in their seats. The judge adjusted her glasses. "What was the name of this file again?" she asked. Katie didn't blink. "Harvest Candidates, Your Honor." And there it was. The mask wasn't just slipping when it had fallen off and shattered. The defense scrambled, claimed the document was taken out of context, that it was an internal draft, that it didn't reflect policy, didn't matter. By then, James Burke had already flipped. Facing a possible 25 years, he cut a deal with the prosecution and took the stand. Calm, emotionless, brutally honest. He admitted to every shell company, every payment, claimed Karen orchestrated the annex strategy, and that he handled the logistics and financial laundering. He didn't plead innocence. He just wanted fewer years in a smaller cell. The judge recessed court for 2 hours. When we returned, she delivered the verdicts like thunderclaps. Karen Wells. Guilty on all counts: racketeering, wire fraud, conspiracy, attempted grand theft, obstruction of justice. Sentenced to 15 years at HOA. In state prison with no parole for at least 10. James Burke. 12 years, reduced to 7 with mandatory cooperation. Victor Alonzo. 18 years as the primary instrument of multiple fraudulent seizures. Prior charges from another state sealed his fate. 3 other board members. Charged with conspiracy and accessory to fraud, each receiving between 3 and 6 years depending on their level of involvement. The judge ordered the dissolution of the Oceanside Community Board full restitution to all victims, and placed a lien on Karen's personal assets to begin repayment. The media went wild. Within days, my story was being broadcast nationally. Florida man fights back against HOA mafia. That was one headline. Another, yacht theft sparks HOA reform movement. It would have been funny if it hadn't been my life they were mining for drama. But something unexpected happened. A senator from Florida, Elaine Rodriguez, took notice. She reached out through Katie and asked to meet. We sat in her office overlooking the bay while she scrolled through photos of my boat and listened to every detail. At the end of the meeting, she leaned forward and said, "We need to write a bill, not a Band-Aid, a real one." And just like that, the Stanley Act was born. A federal bill to limit the power of HOAs, enforce transparency, prevent property annexation without unanimous homeowner consent, and prohibit enforcement actions without court approval. I didn't set out to be a movement. I just wanted my damn boat back. But it turns out when you pull one thread, the whole sweater unravels. 3 months later, I was back where I belonged, on the deck of Second Wind, the sun dipping low over the Gulf, a cooler of cold beer at my feet, and the old girl humming beneath me like she knew we'd both made it out of something nasty. I'd spent the past weeks rebuilding her interior. Sanded wood, replaced the stolen electronics, polished every surface twice, maybe 3 times. It wasn't about restoration. It was about reclaiming. The air was light that day, briny with a touch of jasmine from the trees near the marina. And for the first time in what felt like forever, no one was watching me through a hedge. No letters in the mailbox, no envelopes taped to the gate. Just peace. Just mine. I'd moved the boat to a different slip, new marina far from Oceanside. My house was still there, but I'd reinforced every inch of the perimeter with new fencing, legal signs, and a motion-activated sprinkler system that blasted anyone who lingered too close. Karen would have hated it. That made me smile. The media storm had died down mostly. A few follow-up stories popped up here and there. Stanley Act Clears Committee was the latest headline I saw. Senator Rodriguez kept her promise. The bill was gaining traction, and rumor had it the HOA lobby was sweating bullets. I'd become something I never meant to be, a symbol. People emailed, called. One guy sent a framed picture of his RV titled "Still Mine, Thanks to You." Another mailed me a fruit basket with a handwritten note. HOA tried to fine me for my kids' chalk drawings. I lawyered up instead. You're my spirit animal. I didn't ask for this. I wasn't a hero. I just refused to be a victim. Katie, meanwhile, was swimming in job offers. She turned them all down, said she liked working with the stubborn kind. We started meeting once a week, coffee or drinks, sometimes to talk about the case, sometimes just to sit quietly and enjoy the absence of war. She told me she was approached about writing a book. I told her I'd sue her if she didn't make me look rugged and mysterious. Edgar naturally disappeared back into his shadows. Left a voicemail 2 weeks ago. Heading out to track some guy in Nevada trying to fake his own death. Good work out there, sailor. No return address. Classic Edgar. And Karen? She appealed. Of course she did. Cried about wrongful prosecution and media bias. The judge laughed her out of the room and added a note recommending a psych evaluation. Rumor has it she's teaching mandatory community gardening in a medium security facility. She still tries to file motions. All of them are rejected. Every now and then I look over the court files, the photos, the lies printed in HOA newsletters, the faces of the people who thought they could rob their neighbors blind and vanish into gated mediocrity. But then I shut the folder, pour another beer, and look out at the water. That's the thing about wind. You can't own it. You can't legislate it or file a lien on it. It moves where it pleases, just like I do. And tonight, I'm sailing. As the dock workers untied the ropes, I caught a familiar voice behind me. Pete Granger, my neighbor from down the way. He waved, holding up a six-pack. "Where you headed this time, Captain HOA Slayer?" I laughed. "Nowhere special, just not theirs." The engines rumbled awake. The breeze picked up. The sun kissed the horizon one last time. And second wind, battered but proud, carried me forward, into quiet, into freedom, and away from anything that ever dared call itself a board.